So welcome, friends. This is, as I said at the intro to communion, this is the beginning of a cool 3-week series, Like It, Love It, and Hate It. And as you can imagine how the timing works, the Love It is like right before Valentine's Day. How's that for planning, right? So want to make sure you don't miss February 12th. And I also want to remind you that people might have plans for today after church, but I hope those plans include sticking around for the annual meeting. It's the cooperary one that we do every year. It's important because we have to approve the budget for next year. And it's a time for you to ask questions if you have them about things that are going on in the church. There will be childcare. There's going to be cookies and other snackage out in the lobby. So we're not going to set up potlucks and do that kind of thing because the youth fundraiser that usually raises money for is next week when we pass out all the ribs and sausages that you have ordered today for the Super Bowl. So that's kind of what's going on. That's why it's a different schedule. And it's important that you be there. Every year it's important. We celebrate some things. We give a vision towards some things. This year it's a little more consequential because, as you know, there's been some pretty significant budget adjustments. And so you having the information and you feeling good about really the hard work that our leadership has done, the deep amount of research, the long deliberations, and then their intense work to make healthy decisions to lead us all to a healthy future. That's what we hope you can catch if you stay for the meeting. So that's the invite, and whether you like meetings, love meetings, or hate meetings, this is a time when co-prayers can sit down as friends and family and learn more about our life together. Okay, pivot to preaching.
He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a one-boy, cuddly toy, my up, my down, my pride and joy. People, let me tell you about him. He's so much fun. Whether we're talking man to man or whether we're talking son to son, yeah, he's my best friend. Yeah, he's my best friend. La la, la 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 la. People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end.
Some things just go together, like free delivery from Hy-Vee Aisles Online with the Hy-Vee Plus Premium membership.
I had to leave that in so it would get streamed live. So, well, let's see. Does Philadelphia have something like that? I don't think so. So I want to talk about these two. I want to talk about Patrick and Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Not in depth. But I want you to think about what they've got going on. They have a relationship that's friendship, but it's got more to it than that. And we're going to address that later on in the message. What I want you to appreciate is that friendships don't just happen automatically. They take effort, like these two put into it, and they take fun together, like these two seem to have. And it's not just superstar quarterbacks and superstar record-breaking tight ends that we should look to as role models. I would suggest we've got an even better one in Jesus. This is a scene, or this is a photo from The Chosen. And if you are new to The Chosen, it's an amazingly good historical, little bit fictionalized drama, comedy sometimes, about the life of Jesus in the early church. And so for those of you that are like, I've never seen that, and I'd like to see it and talk with people about it, and I'd like to do that at church where there's free snackage and a little bit of educated guidance, I've got the answer for you. It is going to start the week after Ash Wednesday, so the first week in March. And I invite you, any friends or neighbors that you want to join you, to be part of that. We're doing season 1 and we're doing season 3. So put that in your pocket and remember that. But I want you to look at this image of Jesus. I want you to look at this image of Jesus because, and I think I used this last week when we were closing up the series Snarky Jesus, but I used the same photo then because it shows the heart of Jesus. Now the religious term, if you grew up in like a really religious-y environment, the religious church term that people use is Jesus eats with sinners. Okay? But in normal speak, Jesus liked having friends. He liked making friends. He liked having people. His mission was to have people trust that he would be their friend. And that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to start there in the concept of friends and what the definition of a friend means. So for friend, I tend to think a friend is anybody who likes me enough to spend some time with me and also to do some kind of more intimate things like working together or praying together, laughing and eating and sharing stories together. This is, at a basic guy level, that seems to be like a friend. But not everybody rolls like that. Some people have, very few friends, but they're very deep and close. And some of us have a lot of friends, and there are some close ones there, but there's a lot of friends that are just, hey, I love you because we're here together. Let's go have some fun. So I want to ask, how many of you are kind of like the small pocket of intentionally deep friends? Got any of those friend developers here? All right. Well, I salute and congratulate you because that is an awesome, awesome blessing. And when you're kind of a lots of friend person, it's hard to make time and sometimes even energy for those. How many of you are of a lots of friends person? Okay. So everybody else that didn't raise their hand is kind of a I don't need friends person, right? Is that what I'm picking up? Well, what I want to talk about is not just what makes a friend, because there are some basics to being a friend, but what makes a really good friend? What makes an accepting friend different from a forging friend? So I want to talk about the 4 different versions of love that are described in both C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves, but also are populated throughout Scripture. And 3 of these are well known to you. Maybe the 4th one is less so. And so these are the 4 types of love, and I hope you can see that on the big screen there. The first is eros. Now, if you've heard of the word erotic love, ideas come to mind, right? Hopefully not too many pictures, but ideas. But I want to speak from not a kind of a baseline cultural view of eros, but a philosophical one. The definition of eros is a love that is attached to something or someone because you see an attribute in them, in him or her, or this thing that you really are drawn to, that you feel affection for. So obviously it's about, romantic love and spouses, partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, that sort of thing. But it's also things like, I like to go to football games. I love football games. I'm attracted to them. Sometimes it's like you bought your furniture because you were attracted to it. I mean, at a philosophical level, there's a lot of things that have an eros function in your life. And that's not bad, because if there wasn't an eros function in your life, you wouldn't have any children and you wouldn't be here from your parents, right? I mean, there has to be this thing where people are drawn together. But I would say that that's a because of love. You love somebody, something, some experience because it satisfies a need or a longing, or it just fills you with beauty and warmth to see this, to be part of it. That's the because of love, eros. Now, the next one you see is a mother holding her child. We call that the storge love. These are obviously Greek words. So the storge love means it's the natural love that comes from being close to people a long time, including and most especially with families. Right? The longer you spend together, not only do you have this love of maternity or paternity, right? If you're the mom or dad or siblings, but the more you spend time with people, the more you have this kind of, I love them because they're here. And sometimes for parents, that's what you have to work on teenagers, right? I mean, so I love them because they're here. I think they'll be back in a couple of years, right? But that sort of love I'm calling it the natural love. And then the 2 that are more known, agape is the in spite of love. It's the kind of love that God has for us in spite of our sin, in spite of the way we embarrass him, in spite of our hypocrisy, in spite of our stumbling or blasphemy. Jesus' love loves us in spite of what we do. And that's the godlike love that's the underpinning of all of our Christian faith and behavior. And then finally is philia, is the friendship love, which we should have toward everybody except for people in Philadelphia, which we'll just get back to that another 8 days from now. So So the first one, eros, is a popular one in culture. That's what sells. That's what sells websites. It's what baits you to click through things. It's clickbait. It's what gets you to buy clothes that will make you look more attractive. Eros type of thing. But the other three are part of the holy loves. Well, eros is holy because it makes babies, right? But all three of those other loves are something that has a purpose beyond our own satisfaction. It has a God-wired purpose that we'll be talking about. And Christian author C.S. Lewis, he's the one of Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe fame. He had this book that I mentioned earlier called The Four Loves. And I want to quote a few things from that because they are so useful. First of all, to get this started, when C.S. Lewis was unpacking those four loves that I just mentioned, he got some pushback that he was calling friendship a love. It's kind of like, the guy thing, well, I don't love my friends, we're just buddies, right? But Lewis called that a love. And so he got some pushback, as will happen. And this is what he wrote. In some ways, nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair, the eros thing. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love, but friends hardly ever talk about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. Friends stand side by side, and they're absorbed in a common interest or goal. And then we've got more there? No? All right. So then there's Tim Keller, who's a renowned Presbyterian pastor. As I was researching for the sermon, I saw this message that he gave. I watched this message. It was about the four ways that good friendship behaves. The four ways that good friendship behaves. And it was this. So there's four components of friendship. So Lewis talks about the four kinds of love, and then Keller talks about the four components of this healthy love. So they're both into kind of four-pack things. So I want to take you through there. These are the four components of friendship according to Tim Keller. So the first one is constancy. Keller's a really educated dude, so he uses bigger words even than I do. So constancy, but that means being constant in your commitment and things like that. It means that because friendship love, philia, is the only one of the four that you choose. You kind of are attracted to who you're attracted to, that eros thing. You're kind of in the family you are from the whole birth and living together thing, storge. And then you are drawn to God because he forgives you in spite of your failings. So God chose all of us, not just any one of us. So all those three things have kind of a little bit of we're the receiver, but friendship is the one we actually get to choose. You choose your friends. That's why I think your friendiversary, your friendsgiving, those things have taken off because we all love our families, but it might be nice for a year or so to just spend Thanksgiving with our friends, right? Friends are the ones you choose, and once you choose them, the goal for a healthy relationship is to be constant and faithful. It means that your friends aren't a means to an end, but they're the end in themselves. You love them enough in the philosophical sense that you are committed to them and journeying together with them. Proverbs has this awesome verse. Friends love through all kinds of weather, and families stick together in all kinds of trouble. And at first you're like, oh, that sounds right. But stop. Families stick together in trouble. Well, how many of you have relatives that you're not really like, I wouldn't really spend all my possible free time with them, right? This could be your sibling or a parent or a child. But if they need help, you're going to do everything you can to help them. And then once they're helped and you hug and love, hug it out and love them, then you go back to like not really hanging out with them as much as you might otherwise if they were your friends. So the difference here is that families stick together because they're used to it, because it's wired in us to take care of each other in our family so that our family will survive, right? It's kind of the genetic disposition toward being supportive and protective of your family. But friends are something that you choose. And it's in choosing them and in them choosing you that this constant commitment is there. We're going to stick together. Of course I'm going to stick together when they need it with my family, but you, Bob, Dave, Susan, Clara, I'm going to stick with because we have agreed to do that as friends. You know, one of the things that I remember, one of my first friend learnings was, give some background, it happened when I was in elementary school, and we had this neighborhood group of friends, and we were probably over 3 different grades, and we kind of all just went through school together. And I was in the middle grade, and my friend Todd was in the oldest of the grades, you know, as we climbed up. And there was another kid his age and a couple, you know, under us. Well, as it happened, and I'm not saying this to like brag, it's just, you know, I must have had a really good preschool, or I don't know, coaching or something. But by the time I got to 3rd grade, I was getting bored and, trouble. So rather than put me in a detention every day or in the hall, they came up with another plan. How about we just let him skip 4th grade? And then he'll be so overwhelmed and stressed that he won't cause trouble. I'm like, well, that sounds like a fair idea. So they had to interview my mom and dad to make sure they weren't like pushing me or something, like, you know, kind of being helicopterish about it. But as it happened, there was a year when I just got skipped a grade. So I went from 3rd to 5th. I had way better time. It was either because the classes fit better or because there was a whole different vibe of girls. But we're not talking about the Eros. We're talking about Philea. So anyway, but while that was happening, my friend Todd had moved away. This was in Belvedere, Illinois. He had moved away somewhere in Wisconsin, so not super far, but far enough we didn't see him anymore. And one day, I forget what the season was, but one day he came back to town, and we didn't have cell phones, so we just had to walk over to our house and see what we were doing. And a couple of us buddies, we were playing either in the sandbox, you know, blowing up things, or in the clubhouse fighting. And when we see Todd, we're like, "Hey, Todd!" And he comes up and he says, "Hey guys, I have some good news for you," because most of us were in the grade younger than him when he left. He said, "I have some good news. Now I am the same grade as you," because my mom and dad held me back. They thought it would be better for me. And we're like, "Dude," and you know what I'm like? I'm like, "Well, that is crazy," and luckily, one of the other kids punched me. He said, "It is crazy because we were just talking about how much we missed you, and we're glad you're here." That little punch has stuck with me the rest of my life. I was so focused on myself and wanted to share my good news. But this young man, this child, who wanted to be closer to us even as he moved farther away, was trying to bond with us again in a new way. And all I could think about was, that's ironic. I didn't know what the word irony meant, but that's ironic because look what happened. And my friend shut me up. I've never forgotten that lesson. It not only takes work to be a friend, it takes work to keep a friend. And it takes loving people around you to grow together as a friend. And that leads into actually the reason I tell you that story is because the second element that Keller used was carefulness. Carefulness is what I didn't have in that first exchange with Todd. But it is what I grew thanks to that punch. It is what I grew to remember in the future. So a lot of scripture talks about this. So check this out. If you wake your friend in the early morning by shouting, "Rise and shine," it will sound to him more like a curse than a blessing. Most of you who have teenagers know that that is also a curse. So remember to love them and still get them out the door without, all that sort of stuff. So what that tells me is people don't want to be annoyed, right? This other one is a little deeper. Singing light songs to the heavy-hearted is like pouring salt in their wounds. So I'm seeing some guidance here from Proverbs. Don't be annoying and don't joke around when people are grieving. That is the heart of carefulness. That's the heart of carefulness that God is asking us to have. There's a famous poem called Mending Wall. Does anybody remember reading that? Speaking of school, back in school, Robert Frost. There is something that doesn't like a wall. And one of the lines in the middle is when he's helping this older gentleman, they're repairing the wall as they walk alongside it, each on their own side of the property. And Frost is the younger man, and he's wondering, well, why are we building this fence? We got no animals, and all there is different trees on both sides. The trees aren't going to be stopped by a fence if they want to, So he started kind of interviewing the guy, like, why do we do this exactly? And the guy's answer was something his father told him, the older guy's answer: good fences make, anybody know? Good neighbors. Yes. You're in an honors class, I can tell, Henry. Good job. Yeah, good fences make good neighbors. And here's what I want to suggest, that good fences make good neighbors, but good boundaries make good friends, not favors. See, I tried to rhyme it a little bit, so he goes, oh, I get it. Neighbors, favors, okay. On the rhyme. What I mean is, though, if you and your friends establish some ways of doing things, like if I invite people to a party, do I have to invite all my friends, or will that be hurt your feelings? Or are people like, I don't care, I'm plenty busy, invite me if you want. Right? I mean, there's all sorts of, especially I think with young women, or maybe women of all ages, but when we're wired for intimacy, sometimes not being invited something that other people are can feel like, ooh, I've been hurt. And that's fair. Guys are like, oh, that sucks, I'm going to go play basketball. But if we have the boundaries in advance, then we are much more likely to have a healthy friendship. The other thing is that then when a friend asks us for help, or we want to ask a friend for help, if we've decided what our rhythm is, what our commitment is, then it doesn't feel like we're asking for a favor. Like, I don't really know if they're my friend. I can't really tell because we got this kind of not sure, this ambivalence. So if I ask them, it's like, hey, could you do me a favor? But if you know who you are, if you're established in your friendship, if you've been constant with each other and you know what's expected or what is just kind of the rule, then you can say, hey, I need you to pick up my kid tomorrow at 3. Cool? Yes. It's not a favor. It's part of the friendship. So these two things, carefulness just now, right? And then the first one, most of all, which is, what did I just say? Thank you. There are 4 C's. I should be able to remember these. Constancy, that's what, constancy and carefulness. So those are friendship guidelines. If you can do constancy and carefulness, you can be a good friend, right? That's pretty clear. But if you want to be something better than a good friend, you got to ask yourself a question. If you want to be an accepting friend rather than just a forging friend. I mean, an accepting means you're accepted, you accept them. Forging is a verb that means you're putting some effort into it. And the goal of this hot forge is to make you something different than you are. It's to make you better than you are, and it's to make them better than you are. Very few friendships go this deep. But I want to suggest to you that this is a friendship style that will give you a lifetime of deeper satisfaction, but it's also more work. And so to get any deeper, we have to ask, do you want to be liked? Because if you're a constant and careful friend, you'll be liked. Or do you want to be a friend, a forging friend? Because that's going to take more work. So I'm going to talk about those quickly here. The third element of that friendship, according to Tim Keller, is what we call candor. It's the idea that I am going to tell you the truth, not every time it occurs to me, but when I think you really need to hear it. Have any of you had a conversation with a friend when they told you something that hurt your feelings, but you kind of knew you needed to hear that? Has that ever happened? Well, if it has, then consider yourself fortunate that you had a friend that was willing to risk short-term pain for your long-term gain. Now, if they were totally off base and they just hurt your feelings and there was no point to it, well, then that's a different topic. But if you can tell somebody's really been thinking about how they can help you be a better person, how they can help you do better in life, then I would point us to another proverb. The wounds of a friend mean well, but the kisses of an enemy are profane. This is the Living English Bible, different than I usually use. The wounds of a friend mean well. They hurt your feelings or they challenge you, but they did it because they wanted you to be a better version of you. Whether they succeed or not, whether their assumptions were right or not, is kind of beside the point. They were willing to risk their short-term discomfort and maybe long-term consequences if you were immature about it in order to help you become a better version of you. So obviously when we're going into that, we need to kind of prepare for that kind of conversation. Here's another attempt at axioms and rhyming. Angry words can become a distraction. Choose your approach well, choose your words well, and gain some traction. If you are going to say something, spend time praying. Talk it over with your Heavenly Father and your friend Jesus. Because what is the test of true friendship is really wanting the long-term best for them, not the short-term comfort for you. And the fourth component of friendship that Keller talks about is counsel. Counsel means you pick good friends, you get advice from good friends, and you continue to be a good friend. Proverbs, become wise by walking with the wise. Hang out with fools and watch your life fall to pieces. The godly give good advice to their friends, and the wicked lead them astray. And then, I love this from Matthew. Let me tell you, there we go. How's that for friendship? I told you to get on that screen. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. I think that applies to friends too, right? If you've got friends that always agree with you, that always, well, what do you want to do? I have no opinions. I mean, that can happen in a partnership too, and that's a bad deal. But for you to stay salty, for you to make a impression around you, not for your sake and vanity, but for their betterment. You need to stay salty. You need to let God flavor you so that you can flavor others with health. And then finally, I did say this was the 4 components of friendship according to Keller, but I can't leave well enough alone. So there's a 5th C word that I want to share, and it's the Greek word charis. It's the base of charisma, right? But charis means grace. God's grace, this forgiving grace, this willing to overlook wrongs grace. And Proverbs helps us out here again. Overlook an offense and bond of friendship, fasten on to a slight, and goodbye, friend. If you can overlook the small slights that a friend gives you, then you're likely to have a more lifelong friend if you hold on to it and always remember and always remind them. This applies to marriage too. If you're always bringing up the thing they did wrong that hurt your feeling, first of all, get some counseling, right? Because that's not a healthy way to live. And if you do that to your friends, imagine what you're doing to your kids or your parents. But if you can let go of those slights, you will begin to bond a lifelong friendship. And finally, when we're talking about bonding a friendship, I want to remind you that the purpose of friendship that God has for us is not just so we can be cozy and have fun people to sit around the campfire with, which is all good, or to go out for lunch with or drinks with. The purpose of friendship is to get us closer to heaven. Since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, he wrote, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. There's the charis, the grace. Remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I want to close with the story of a little boy. This is a little kid in Atlanta, Georgia, who got picked on and bullied in the playground. I mean, that's nothing new, right? At least probably 3/4 of the kids on any playground get picked on or bullied because somehow we've surrendered all the power to the 1/4 who does the bullying, right? Or the tone setting. Well, this little boy had been picked on a few times, and he was thinking about it over the summer. He and his family are Christian, and he decided, I don't want the new school year to start with me getting picked on or any other kid to get picked on. So he and his mom made a plan. He said, Mom, would you make me a t-shirt? And I want it to say, I will be your friend. I'm going to wear it to school, and if anybody doesn't have a friend, then they can trust that I will do that for them, and I will be their friend. Well, he did it. Guess what happened? Did he get mocked and picked on the playground? No. Because that vulnerability empowered others to say, thanks, man. You seem nice. I'd like to be friends with you. Happened all over. His mom wrote about it on Facebook, and then you know what happens. He's on CBS News. But this little boy had a vision. That the key to friendship isn't just picking the right ones, it's in picking your attitude so that you become the friend that you long to have. As we close, I want to also remind you that what we are as a church is not just a family, storge, that, well, we love each other because we're all here, so we have to. But we're a community of philia. We're a community of people who decide we want the same thing together. And so we're going to sacrifice and love each other and forgive each other because we're going to the same place together. And our mission as a church, called Prairie's mission of a church, is simply to change lives with Jesus' love. And that's a heck of a lot easier to do when you've got friends with you that are helping to do it. My prayer for us is that as we begin this new year, well, I guess it's already begun, but we'll say the new year starts after Super Bowl. As we begin the new year, man, we are committed not just to being friends in our personal life and friends to each other in our church life, but being friends of Jesus in our together life. And I ask this in Jesus' holy name.